everyone, I'm Georgia and this is The Sound of Georgia. We've all seen those top 10 lists, right? The lists that tell us things that we, according to the titles, don't know. But when you're as big a fangirl as I am, you do. So today we're going to be looking at 30 things I absolutely did know about The Sound of Music. But I have my computer here and I've got 3 articles of top 10 things you didn't know about Sound of Music. They were just the first 3 that came up when I googled 10 things you didn't know about The Sound of Music. So I'm going to be screen capping this and we're going to go through and work out exactly how many I did actually know and how many facts appear on more than one list. I will never claim to know everything about this movie because I am always learning new stuff. But most of the stuff you can easily access I have heard before. Many times. So many times that for the most part I've forgotten where I first heard them. So here's the first article, and these will all be linked in the down below. 10 things you probably didn't know about The Sound of Music. The movie was inspired by The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, a memoir written by Maria von Trapp in 1949. Maria was hired as a tutor, not a governess as portrayed in the movie, for one of the von Trapp children, and married their father Georg von Trapp in 1927. The book recounts their escape made by the family as the Nazis took over Austria. They made their way to Italy and then later travelled to America. The iconic opening scene had to be reshot several times because Julie Andrews kept falling over. If there is one fact you didn't know about The Sound of Music that is pretty much guaranteed to be in every one of these lists, it's this one. That shot was accomplished by my being at one end of a very long field and the helicopter coming down through the trees at the other end of the field, said Julie Andrews. The trouble with this was a jet helicopter, and the downdraft from those jets was so strong that every time I made my turn, the downdraft just flattened me into the grass. There were 10 children in the real von Trapp family. Georg von Trapp had 7 children with his first wife Agatha Whitehead. Georg and Maria had 3 children together, Rosemary, Eleanor and Johann. This is true, obviously. My issue with this one is the way it is phrased, it makes it sound like there were 10 when she first arrived. You actually have to read the description for you to work out that that is not the case. There were only 7 when she arrived. By the end of the story, when they escaped, there were 10 of them. But the last 3 were hers. But with the time compression Sound of Music has, where they cut out the 11 years between the first event, her arriving and becoming the governess and marrying their father, and the second event, where they escape, of course there wouldn't be the other 3 kids. So yes, it is true, but I don't like the way they phrase this one. Charmian Carr, the actress who played Liesl, admitted to having a crush on Christopher Plummer, who played her father in the movie. She was 21 and he was 35 when they filmed the movie. Nicholas Hammond's growth spurt became an issue. Hammond, who played Friedrich, grew 6 inches in the 6 months The Sound of Music was shot. There are a lot of heel lifts and camera angle adjustments involved. Charmian Carr, Liesl, had to shoot scenes while standing on a box at one point. Julie Andrews tripping while singing I Have Confidence wasn't part of the scene. Director Robert Wise decided to include the clip of the accidental trip in the final cut. Rosemary's baby star, Mia Farrow, auditioned for the role of Liesl. And there's a handy clip you can watch. I'm not going to play it, but feel free to look it up. Sharon Tate and Geraldine Chaplin were also in the running. During the filming of the boat scene, Julie Andrews was in charge of catching Kim Carruth, Gretel, who couldn't swim. The assistant director approached Andrews right before they started filming to warn her that Carruth couldn't swim. If you can fall forward off the boat and try to be the first to get her, this would be great. Well, if you watch the movie, you know that that doesn't happen. The gazebo scenes were filmed in Los Angeles. The real gazebo isn't big enough for them to do all the dancing they do, so as soon as the characters enter it, we're on a stage in Hollywood. And finally, for this list, the real Maria von Trapp appeared in the film. You can see her walking with 2 other women in the background as Julie Andrews makes her way through the arch of the building. If I'm remembering correctly, those 2 women were her daughter, Rosemary, and Rosemary's daughter, Barbara. So that's it for the first list. 10 out of 10 that I already knew. So here's the second list, The Sound of Music, 10 things you didn't know about the film. Number 1. It is the 5th highest grossing film of all time. Sort of. Sound of Music won 5 Oscars in 1966 and became the highest grossing film in history, knocking Gone with the Wind off the top spot. Translating the figures in today's money, it would be the 5th highest grossing film of all time. Number 2. The key players responsible for making it a success nearly didn't take part. Julie Andrews nearly turned down the part due to its similarity to the previous year's Mary Poppins. Robert Wise originally didn't want to direct the film because he felt it was too saccharine. Christopher Plummer didn't want anything to do with the film, referring to it as The Sound of Mucus, and allegedly needed to have some drinks before going to set so he could cope. He hated Edelweiss so much that he asked for it to be replaced. He's come around by now. Lots of critics didn't care for it either, in both its stage and film incantations. The eminent critic Pauline Kael described the film as the sugar-coated lie that people seem to want to eat. Brooks Atkinson, a New York Times critic, said it was cliched, and Walter Kerr at the New York Herald Tribune thought the show was not only too sweet for words, but almost too sweet for music. I did know that one, but I didn't know who said what. The real Maria von Trapp has a cameo in the film, but wasn't invited to the premiere. Though the film is based on her 1949 memoir, The Story of the Von Trapp Family, and she appeared as an extra with her daughter Rosemary, spelled incorrectly, the film execs didn't see fit to invite the real Maria von Trapp to the opening night. Having been invited to the premiere of Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical, when no similar invitation arrived from the film company, she took it up with the producers. You'd have thought they'd apologised for their oversight. Instead, the producers told her there were no seats left. Yeah. Number 5. The Trapp Family Singers were a real band for almost 30 years. The film depicts the Von Trapps as a wealthy family who had leisure for a bit of music on the side. In reality, music was their sole source of income. When they fled the country, they just said they were off to tour America, where they continued to make music. In fact, they sang on an Elvis album. Number 6. Edelweiss is American, not Austrian. Rather than being a traditional Austrian folk tune, the song Edelweiss was written for the musical. It was the last song Oscar Hammerstein II ever wrote. Number 7. Julie Andrews had never played a guitar before appearing in the film. Julie Andrews learned to play do-re-mi before filming on the hillside, but she always had trouble singing and playing at the same time. She found it much easier, reportedly, after a big shot of snaps. It makes you look at the above clip in a different light. Number 8. Julie Andrews fell over all the time. Yeah, I seem to recall this one from the earlier list. When Andrews sang the opening track on that idyllic hillside, she was being blown about by the helicopter used to film the aerial shot. When she sang I Have Confidence, the famous trip through the Von Trapp family gate, was accidental, but kept in by the director because he thought it added character. The rest of the time, Andrews would pratfall to amuse the other cast members or relieve tension during a tiring shoot. That is awesome. Number 9. Should a nuclear apocalypse happen, The Sound of Music will be played on a loop. 1966, the year The Sound of Music took 5 Oscars, was also the year that the BBC decided to build a nuclear bunker. At the height of the Cold War paranoia, the film was selected by television execs to be broadcast in the event of a nuclear strike. 100 days of television were programmed and were kept handy until 1993. This I did not know, and it is awesome. Number 10. Half a century on, Sound of Music fans are still coming out of the woodwork. While Lady Gaga's Julie Andrews medley at the Oscars warmed most of the hearts on the internet, screenwriter and producer Shonda Rhimes was having none of it. And there's her little tweet. And so here's the final list. 10 things you didn't know about The Sound of Music. They're so original with these titles, aren't they? Number 10. Audrey Hepburn as Maria. In 1956, Paramount bought the rights to the Von Trapp singer story and were intending to make an English-language version with Audrey Hepburn as Maria. When Hepburn declined, Paramount dropped its plans for a film and instead turned it into a musical, which opened on November 16, 1959 at the Lunt-Fontanne Theatre in New York City and ran on Broadway for 1,443 performances. The musical won 6 prestigious Tony Awards, including Best Musical. That's a slightly condensed version. Rodgers and Hammerstein weren't mentioned at all. I knew it. Number 9. Casting Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews was screenwriter Ernest Lehman's first and only choice to play Maria, but when Robert Wise joined the project as the director, his first two choices to play Maria were Grace Kelly and Shirley Jones. Because we really needed Shirley Jones to be the heroine in 3 Rodgers and Hammerstein movies. That seems like too much. Wise changed his mind, however, when he saw footage of Andrews in Mary Poppins, which hadn't been released yet. Andrews had some reservations about the sweetness in the theatrical version, but Lehman and Wise shared her own concerns and were looking to avoid that. She then signed a contract with Fox to star in the film for $225,000, which in 2016 would be equivalent to $1,740,000. That seems fairly similar to one we heard before. As does the next one. Number 8. Christopher Plummer didn't want to play the captain. Casting for the role of the captain was much more difficult than casting for the role of Maria. Bing Crosby, Yul Brynner, Sean Connery and Richard Burton were all considered for the part, but Wise wanted Christopher Plummer after having seen him on Broadway. Plummer, however, turned down the role several times. It wasn't until Wise flew to London and met with Plummer that he was able to explain his concept of the role, and he was assured that he would work with the screenwriter to improve the character after the actor accepted. In June 1960, 20th Century Fox purchased the film adaptation rights for $1.25 million, which was equivalent to approximately $10,100,000 in 2016, against 10% of the gross. Again, that one seemed awfully familiar. That's almost like 2 facts in one, actually. Number 7. The Von Trapps never climbed a mountain to freedom. In the movie, the Von Trapp family can be seen hiking over the Alps to freedom. However, in reality, the family walked to a local train station and boarded a train to Italy, and then to London, and then boarded a ship to New York. Salzburg, where the Von Trapps lived, was only a few miles away from the Austrian-German border, and is too far from both the Swiss and Italian borders for them to actually walk. If the family had hiked over the mountains, they would have ended up in Obersalzberg, Germany, the mountain retreat of Adolf Hitler. As I said in my trip to Salzburg video, you can see where they filmed the final scene if you're standing in Eagle's Nest. Number 6. Captain Von Trapp wasn't cold and stern. In the film, the family patriarch Captain Von Trapp was presented as being cold and stern. However, in real life, he was a really good father to his children and was always playing with them and encouraging them. The real Maria Von Trapp and her children were disturbed by his portrayal in the film and asked producers to soften his character, but Wise refused. Number 5. 20th Century Fox was on the brink of bankruptcy. When The Sound of Music was released, 20th Century Fox was on the brink of bankruptcy because of the financial failure of Cleopatra. The Sound of Music ended up being so successful at the box office that it became the highest grossing film of 1965, and by November 1966 it was the highest grossing movie of all time, surpassing Gone with the Wind, which held the distinction for 24 years. Number 4. The opening scene wasn't easy to film. You all know this one, you've seen it twice before. During the opening shot of Julie Andrews singing on the mountain, she was being filmed by a helicopter while speakers were hidden in the trees so that she could lip sync. Unfortunately, she had a lot of trouble standing upright, as well as hearing the music, because the jet engines would fling her across the grass and drown out the music. They had to do this about 6 or 7 times before Wise got the shot he wanted. Number 3. The Sound of Mucus. Christopher Plummer found all aspects of working on The Sound of Music to be unpleasant and would call the film, that movie, S&M or The Sound of Mucus. On set, he tried to eat and drink away his sorrows, which caused him to gain weight. He gained so much extra weight that his costumes had to be refitted. Number 2. Gretel almost drowned. In the rowboat scene, Kim Carruth, who played the youngest daughter Gretel, nearly drowned when the boat tipped over. Julie Andrews was supposed to catch her and carry her out of the water, but ended up falling backwards and wasn't able to get her in time. As a result, Carruth swallowed so much water and ended up vomiting on Heather Menzies, who played Louisa. And number 1, Julie Andrews had to learn how to play the guitar. Julie Andrews had never played the guitar before she appeared in the movie. She had to learn how to play, but always had difficulty singing and playing at the same time. She would sometimes take a shot of Austrian schnapps before she did a scene to relax. Christopher Plummer also learned to play the guitar and sing for the role, but his vocals and guitar playing were redubbed. Did you see a common thread? You'd heard some of them before. I knew all the ones in that list, 8.5-ish in the second list, and all 10 on the first list. And even though I knew all of these, most of them were actually different, all things considered. There was actually a lot less overlap than I thought there would be. Obviously, these were just the first 3 that came up when I googled 10 things you don't know about The Sound of Music. So maybe if I picked some different lists, there would be more overlap. But for these 3 particular ones, not as much overlap as you would think. And hey, I did learn some new things. But despite the lack of overlap in this one, pretty much across the board, no matter which one you pick, you're guaranteed to find these ones. As we've established, the opening theme. That one is the most common one you didn't know. It's on all of them. Gimme Nearly Drowned is always a big one. It was on 2 of these lists. Christopher Plummer, not wanting anything to do with it, is always a good one. It was on 2 of these. And there's always something about the real Von Trapps. And that's everything I've got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you knew any of these things. Or, like me, did you actually learn something from looking at these lists? And what is your favourite fact about The Sound of Music? Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my video next week. So long, farewell!